which could be used against the aliens, and they could get us into an intergalactic war. Without us ever having any warning, the Bush administration has finally agreed to let the military build a forward base on the moon, and which will put them in a better position to keep track of the goings and comings of the visitors from space, and to shoot at them if they so decide.
Yeah, well, I want to deny the quote
you used. Okay, I wanted to make sure.
Right. But most of the rest is correct.
Okay.
That they, in my opinion, have been developing weapons.
Right.
Yeah, they've been developing weapons that are, in my opinion, designed to deal with extraterrestrials. They've certainly been designing tracking ways of finding out where they're going and when they're coming and going and all of that sort of thing. And I think even though the Army had been trying to get a base on the moon for years, I think that President Bush finally gave permission for them to start going ahead with it.
Right.
And so this is really just kind of routine if you get into the military orbit of what was going on, because they have taken this whole phenomenon very seriously.
Right.
And General Twining designated them as enemy aliens right from the beginning.
Exactly.
And I don't know that designation has ever been withdrawn.
Right.
I think it's a good thing. We should try and find out.
Yes.
Ask Secretary Gates if anybody has ever withdrawn it, and if so, when was it done? I think it still applies.
Yeah.
And what some of us fear, of course, knowing General Eisenhower's reservation about the people into whose hands all of this technology fell, that it might be just used as an excuse for spending another few $100 billion of the taxpayers' money, providing lots of promotions for generals and more business for the industrial industries that support the war machine. So they have a motive for doing all of this, which they say, oh well, we're concerned. Maybe there are some friendly people up there, but maybe there are some that aren't so friendly, and we can't take a chance. So we've got to have all this stuff ready in case they should start shooting at us. Well, if you go back in the history of the last 60 years, we're the ones that have started all the shooting.
Dean Davis with United Press International. Could you please address the vehicle that there was a drawing displayed of? Why would this vehicle be on display at an air show? What is the power source that you are asserting is going to be so very useful? And how can you determine this vehicle is not something that is being developed, by a government agency?
In fact, I think that was the testimony. This is an alien reproduction vehicle, and just to be clear, this means that it is based on advanced anti-gravity and zero-point energy propulsion systems. Those are the propulsion systems. They are being manufactured by a consortium of companies that include Lockheed Martin, Northrop, SAIC, and other corporations. They do have superluminal capacity, in other words, faster than the speed of light capacity. I think Mr. McCandlish and other witnesses that he's identified could go into more of the technical physics of it. I'm just a country doctor from Virginia, I tell people. I mean, really. And but this is actually what is the reason it's called alien reproduction vehicle, is that it's based on the study of extraterrestrial vehicles, but it is manufactured by human military intelligence, aerospace contracting arrangements. And this is very important. It means that we, Homo sapiens, have the ability to access this so-called zero-point field of energy, which is the ambient field of energy from which all matter and energy is fluxing, and access that energy and generate all the power we need to run this planet without fossil fuels or pollution.
Do you have any direct evidence, though, that this, I mean, we're talking about the same government that so appropriately named a snooper program carnivore. So just because it's named the alien reproduction vehicle, considering the history and the questions that have been existing for such a long time about flying saucers, I mean, do you know, is there any direct reason to believe that this is actually derived from technology? Any of the witnesses who can attest to that? And how would this, a propulsion system, a rocket engine doesn't necessarily translate into electricity. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the first part of your question, I would say that the testimony of witnesses we have, some of whom are here, others that are not here, but they're in the briefing materials, is that they have studied, we have studied specifically extraterrestrial vehicles which have been retrieved. The breakthroughs in that research have led to applications that have led to the building of this and similar anti-gravity anti-gravity devices, and that, in fact, this can be proven in open testimony before Congress, and that is exactly what we are calling for. We have the witnesses to establish this, and they also have the documents and the specific details of the propulsion systems. But this is not a jet internal combustion system at all. It is actually kicked in by a type of electric power source, and it then accesses this ambient zero-point energy field that is responsible for all matter and energy existing, and by special configurations and what have you, it causes a cancellation of mass inertia and an anti-gravity effect. And this is a complex technical discussion which is probably beyond the scope of this conference, but we have materials in the briefing document that we can provide you with references to people who have studied the anti-gravity effect. As far back as certainly the 1950s. We have one witness who said that his family was connected to the RAND Corporation, and that by the mid-1950s that more money had been spent on anti-gravity propulsion systems than the totality of the Manhattan Project. So yes, we can establish those elements.
UFO, and he says, no, we don't tell the public about this. It would panic the public.
These vehicles have been seen and confirmed.
And we detect that object on the radar.
As we approached this glow, it turned to a monstrous circle of white lights on the water.
Brightly glowing, reddish-orange, elliptical object approximately 70 feet in diameter, emerged out of the water, shot into space, traveling at about 7,000 miles per hour. This was tracked on ship's radar and substantiated.
Who's making all this noise at this time of the morning? So when I got within about 50 yards of the 4 or 5 people that were standing there, one being the chief of security, they were looking up in the air, and I said, gee, their heads are all looking at the same direction. Well, I looked up to the west, northwest, and to my amazement, there were lights flashing around the sky, moving at anywhere from what seemed like 2,400 to about 3,800 miles per hour. Now, the fact that we're taking an estimate from a distance, we figure, well, this is quite something. However, we continue to watch these darting lights go across the sky and stop, absolutely stop, come to a dead stop and reverse in an acute angle, their direction, and then proceed on, and they were traveling so fast that you could almost see a pattern left by, if you are computer people, when you move a mouse real quick across the screen, you see a little bit of a tail. Well, that's exactly the way these 6 or 7 craft worked. After 5 minutes of watching these things, they all seemed to group up to the west-northwest.